Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how you can access your computer remotely. Here I'm going to use Raspberry Pi as a computer, but you can use these steps in other computers as well, and more or less the steps will be same and it will work. So let's get started. And also I would like to mention before starting that you need to, if you want to follow this video, you should also check my previous video, because some of the steps that are needed in this video will also need the steps that are mentioned in the previous video. So that video is also important if you want to follow this one. So I will put the link of the previous video in the description of this video. Okay, so let's get started. So to access a computer remotely, first thing you need to do is that you need to give a static IP to the computer in the network. So this static IP can be used in the network to access it. Okay. So there are two ways by which you can give static IP to Raspberry Pi. One way is by editing the DHCP file, and the other way is using the router. So how to do it using the router, I have already mentioned in the previous video. You have to give a, I will show you how, I will show that step again. So first let me log into the router. This is, so to log into router, generally the IP is 192.168.0.1. So I will log in, and here you can see that I have address DSCP reservation feature. So I can just check out the MAC address of a computer and I can assign a IP to it, and every time the computer it gets connected to the router, it will have the same IP. So this address reservation feature is almost in all the routers, and you can use it to give a static IP to a router. If you want to give a static IP to any computer, you can use this feature in the router. So in the status, I can go and see the DHCP list, and I can get the MAC address of different computers that are connected to this router. Okay, so once you have assigned a static IP, uh, when you add, you get the option of IP address and MAC address. You just enter the MAC address of the computer you want to assign static IP and enter the static IP. Static IP can be any IP between the this DSCP settings. So it can start from 100, and in between 100 to 200 it can be any IP. So I will not go in details about DSCP settings, okay, because that is beyond the scope of this video. So let's get back. So once you have assigned a static IP, then next thing we need is that we need to create a virtual server. So we will, in this router, in the advanced settings, we have virtual server settings. So you can see that here I have created 3 virtual server listing, and for VNC we have this port. So let's first know about the VNC. So here we are going to use VNC to remotely access a computer. VNC has two parts, VNC server and VNC client. So VNC server, you have to install in the computer that you want to remotely access. In Raspberry Pi, it is by default installed, so we don't have to do much. VNC server is already there. If it's inactive, you might have to activate it. But in my case, I found that the Raspberry Pi already had the VNC server active. So I just have to download the client. So you can download the client uh, just by searching the Google. So I have downloaded real VNC client. If you go to the website of real VNC, you will find that there is a client for almost all the computers, for Windows, Mac, Linux, Raspberry Pi. So here I am using Mac VNC server client. If you are using any other computer, you can just go for the other options. So once you download the VNC server, you can just start the VNC server, and you have to enter few details. I will tell you what details you have to enter, but first get back to the virtual server listing. So when you add a virtual server listing, you have to mention few details. Let's try to add one. So you have to give a name to the virtual server, okay, and you have to schedule it. So there is only two options available here. I will select always, and then you have to mention a server IP host name. So let's see what I have entered here. So server IP host name is the static IP that you have given to the computer that you want to remotely access. In this case, I have given 192.168.0.70 to my Raspberry Pi device. Now you have to enter a external port starting number, external port ending number. So suppose you have like you want to mention different port numbers, then you can just mention a range, or if you have a single port number, then in both the input box you can enter the same number, and that is what I have done. So VNC has a port number 5900 specifically for running it. So that is the reason we have used the 5900, and you also have to use the same number. At least you will have to use same number in the internal ports. In the external port you can use a different port number, but in internal ports you have to use 5900, then only it will be able to use the VNC for remote access. So these are the details you have to mention, and here I will be selecting TCP, and internal port I already told you 5900 for VNC. You can see I have created two more servers. This one is for SSH, and SSH port number is 22. So in the internal port I have used 22. In external port 22 was not available because uh, some of the port number are blocked by the ISP, and some are already being used. So you have to use a external port number that is neither blocked nor being used by your for any other process. So this is for SSH, and this third one is an application that I have created in my Raspberry Pi for file sharing. So this is for that purpose. So these are the three virtual server listing I have created. So you only have to create one, that is for VNC. So this is the important part that you need to do, okay. And so after doing these two parts, we have to start the VNC client. I will start the VNC client. So I have here VNC client for Mac. Okay, so as you can see I have this IP address, okay, and if I open this, it will connect to my uh, Raspberry Pi. So this is Raspberry Pi being accessed internally in the network, and I'm using the internal IP. But now I will show you how I will access it externally as well. So first I will close this, and next I will uh, if you have followed my previous videos and you have watched it, then you will be knowing that how I have created a dynamic DNS, and that is also needed for accessing your computer remotely. So dynamic DNS I have created using no IP. Please watch my previous video to get the details of dynamic IP, sorry, dynamic DNS. So my dynamic DNS is this is my dynamic DNS host name. So I will be using the same host name, and before connecting to the computer remotely I need to switch my network so that I can get I can show you how it works remotely. So here I can see, you can see that right now I'm connected to this network, okay, and now I will change it to another network. So my current this computer on which I am recording video, this will get connected to another network, and my Raspberry Pi is will remain on the previous network. Okay, so now we are connected to another network, and now I will remotely access the computer. So first you need to enter the remote host name that we have created with for the purpose of dynamic DNS. Okay, once you enter the host name, it will ask for a username and password for the computer. Okay, so I will enter the username and password that I have for my Raspberry Pi computer. Okay, so now we are connected. So you can see that now we are externally we are remotely connected. Okay, I will show you that both the computers are connected to a different network. So if I go to google.com and search for my IP address, you have a IP address here, and see, so you can see that I have a different IP address here, and in my remote computer I have a different IP address. So this is the IP address of my previous computer, previous network, that is Netgear 92, and in this network I have a separate IP, but I can access my the computer remotely. I can access this computer from anywhere around the world. Okay, and this is the process, guys. So with all the computers, more or less this is the same process. You have to create a virtual server, and you have to get a dynamic DNS, and you have to connect your you should be able to uh, set up a static IP for your computer. Okay, these are the 3-4 steps that need to be followed. If you face any difficulty making your computer access remotely, then you can just leave a comment, and I will try my best to help you out. And if you like this video, guys, please give a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching. And if you give a thumbs up and share it, it will be very helpful and inspirational for us. And please do subscribe to the channel to stay tuned for such more videos. And thank you so much. And please do check the description, and I will leave the link for important videos that are related to this video, as well as other links that you will find helpful and you will find useful. Thank you.